course, our helicopter got into the act today. They brought in a couple of surgeons to the hospital for emergency surgery. We'll have details on all those stories coming up in just a bit.
But first, to the man of the hour, Dave Dahl, standing by live in the weather room with some numbers for us.
Well, I tell you, I've lived here all my life, and it looks like one of the worst storms that I've been through, and I tried to dig out, and I didn't get my car out this morning. We've had a lot of snow here in the Twin Cities, and just to add it all up, this is what it looks like. 16.5 inches officially, and that makes it the greatest December snowstorm that we've ever had here in the Twin Cities. And it also ranks as number 3 in the all-time storms here in the cities. And add the moisture that we've had in the form of rain with that, we've had over 4.27 inches, and that shatters the old record by 1 inch that was set way back in 1891. Now the main problem, the snow is gone, the winds are decreasing. The main problem will be the colder air that's flowing in across the state right now. Temperatures are dropping below 0 already in the northwest corner of our state. Here in the Twin Cities area, our temperature is dropping as well. We're looking to see that the winds combined with those lower temperatures will provide some very, very cold wind chills later on tonight. Definitely don't go out tonight. Don't try to get your car unstuck. It's just not a night to be stuck outside.
And we'll wait to hear for the rest of the forecast from you, Dave, later on.
I'll have it. All right.
Well, Dave Andrews, even though he worked last night, was one of the first reporters on the street this morning, and he's standing by live in the newsroom. Dave, I understand you spent the day with some folks in downtown Minneapolis.
We were downtown most of the day, most of the afternoon as well. In one respect, the timing of the storm was actually fortunate. That's because when people got up this morning, they realized that driving to work would be next to impossible, so most workers stayed home, making it easier for the MTC buses and the snowplows to creep their ways along their routes. Early this morning, downtown Minneapolis was all but deserted. Most of the downtown stores and businesses called their employees, told them not to come in. Business was canceled for the day. The post office quickly decided to cancel mail deliveries also. Local government, Hennepin County and city offices were also closed. The Hennepin County Communications Center was busy handling both emergency and non-emergency calls, but even though many of the people who work here could not make it in, those who were on duty were able to handle the heavy volume of calls. At one point today, Minneapolis police were down to just a handful of squad cars that were able to get out on the streets. Several officers volunteered, however, to use their own four-wheel drive vehicles to answer calls. So all in all, people are making it fairly well considering the extent of this storm. One other problem, Northwestern Bell did report, and you may have noticed this yourself, there were some problems in getting phone calls made in the Twin Cities area today. That's because of the heavy volume of calls caused by the storm. Also the fact that many telephone operators just weren't able to get into work either. They say that by this evening, though, all phone systems and service should be relatively back to normal.
Understand, Dave, you had to use your thumb a little bit this morning getting to work.
Yeah, like many people, my car couldn't get out of the driveway, so I had to hitchhike a ride to the nearest bus stop, and myself and photographer John Blake hopped a bus, headed up downtown, and spent the morning and the early afternoon there, and finally got into work late this afternoon.
Okay, Dave, thank you.
Sounds like a wonderful morning. Well, for days now, Minnesotans have been watching the people of Colorado dig themselves out from a vicious winter storm, including their Stapleton Airport. Well, today the Twin Cities International Airport came to a standstill. The runways at the airport looked much like a ghost town. Nothing was moving but maintenance crews with snowplows. The airport had been socked with more than a foot of snow, but even worse than that were the high winds that continued to blow snow as quickly as it was cleared from runways. Last year, the airport here closed for a brief period during another winter storm. This time, it was closed for 14 hours because of the blizzard conditions. Inside the Story was about the same earlier today. There was little activity. Most flight information showed everything delayed or canceled. And there were other complications. The power at the airport was down for nearly 8 hours because of a broken underground cable that was there that NSP had to fix this morning.
We had no electric till 10, so we were back with candles and our coats and everything from 5:30 from 5:30 to 10. So yeah, it's been really different. There were only maybe 40 people in the whole airport until 8:30.
So far, there is still only one runway operating. Dennis Kraft is at the airport now. Dennis, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on now?
Yes, Carolyn, as you know, the runway has been open all day. The problem has been the taxiways. And right now, I am told they hope to have the airport open at 6 o'clock this evening. And there is a mood of anticipation here at the airport as some of the flight departure times were posted. Some of them were an optimistic 5:30 this evening, most of them headed for the west and east coast. However, 4 airlines have canceled their flights for the rest of the day. Those are Ozark, Continental, U.S. Air, and Eastern. Northwest Orient will fly out, they hope, at 6 o'clock. Most of their flights will be going. They have one 747 standing by. Republic has several flights that are due in here any moment. As soon as those are able to land, they'll put passengers on them, and they'll be flying out. And so right now it looks as if the airport could be open within the next 40 minutes to 50 minutes by 6 o'clock at the latest, they hope.
Have there been any flights that have left this afternoon at all, Dennis?
There was one Western flight that took off. It didn't have any passengers on it, and that was the only plane that was able to get out of here. As you know, the taxiways are the problem. The snow's drifting in so fast that they haven't been able to get the planes from the loading ramps out to the runway. The plane wings could get stuck in that snow, and so they've had to cancel all the flights. They hope to have those taxiways open by 6 o'clock.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Dennis. Well, from the air to the ground, the buses were out this morning, but MTC reports that about 20% of them got stuck in the snow. MTC says that right now just about all local routes are operating, not on schedule as you might expect, and there is no freeway express. With so many motorists unable to dig their cars out today, many people were depending on the MTC.
16s are running pretty regularly. The first one I caught was only about a 5-minute wait, and then on the way back it was about 25 minutes. So you can't depend on it, but they're coming. It's just a matter of waiting.
I've been waiting here about an hour. My feet are froze.
An hour for a bus?
Uh-huh. Since I walked from work, I left at 2, and it's 3 now.
Some bus drivers said it was particularly rough going in St. Paul, easier in Minneapolis and some of the suburbs. Carolyn.
Well, roads, as you might expect, are still snow-packed in most places, and all transportation officials are urging people not to drive unless it is an emergency situation. Plows are out on all the main roads trying to clear at least one lane path. State transportation officials are trying to keep the main lines open, but the exit ramps are the big problem. If they are not snow-covered, they may be blocked with cars and trucks. Abandoned cars blocking traffic are being towed. Minneapolis and St. Paul crews are trying to keep main line open, but they warn it's too windy to salt and sand, so even if they are clear, they may be slippery. Snow emergencies have been declared in both cities. Snow emergency routes are now being plowed in both Minneapolis and St. Paul.
And medical specialist Dr. Michael Breen is here with more on how the hospitals are coping with today's weather. Mike.
Dennis, hospitals are staying open and they are providing basic care, but it's still not a very good time to get sick. Most of the people who man hospitals today are the same ones who were there last night. They're tired and they want to get home, but fortunately, they're not having to deal with many patients. At Hennepin County Medical Center, the night shift worked an extra shift to keep the hospital open. The number of visits here was down because only the sickest patients braved the blizzard. One of those patients was Ms. Ola Richardson, who's on kidney dialysis. Ms. Richardson was brought in by her husband early this morning.
And I had to call North Memorial Ambulance Service, which they did come, but they could only get a block from the house. And after they got to the house, they had to call the fire department, and the fire department hauled us out.
The blizzard has been especially tough on snow shovelers. 2 Minneapolis men have died of heart attacks while clearing snow. 1 man has died in St. Paul. Snow blowers have been as dangerous as shovels. Lyle Christensen fractured and split open 2 fingers when by mistake he tried to unclog his own snow-blowing machine.
Blowing snow, I plugged up, and I don't know if, I'm sure I disengaged the drive, and when I shoved my hand down the chute, it kicked back.
In general today, the patients like Mr. Christensen who needed help got it. Sometimes, though, the medical staff went an extra yard to give it. This morning, Noreen Clinton needed an emergency cesarean section. The only problem, there was no doctor there to perform it. At 5:30 this morning, Noreen's doctor, Charles Crutchfield, walked the 3 miles from his home to the hospital.
Things that were in my mind were that this patient needs help, and I was also wondering if the first-year resident, whom I thought was on call, would be able to do the cesarean section that she needed in case I didn't make it. And the other thing that
Crutchfield did make it after an hour and a half. He arrived at the hospital just in time to deliver a healthy 7-pound baby girl.
Sounds like most of the stories are success stories with doctors getting out and...
You know, somehow it always gets done, Dennis. You know, the climate presents as many impediments as it can, but the things that have to get done and the people who have to come through to do them do come through, and I think that's what's happened again.
Hippocrates would be proud.
Oh, he sure would.
Well, one of the more dramatic stories of the day involved some surgeons trying to get to Children's Hospital in Minneapolis to do some emergency surgery.
Our helicopter got into the act, and reporter Tom Garrison is standing by live at the hospital to tell us a bit about what happened today.
Well, that's right, Carolyn and Dennis. Open heart surgery is underway at this hour on 25-day-old, I should say, Lisa DeBinky. Our helicopter and KSTP became involved when no taxi or police unit could get to the two members of that surgical team that needed to get in here, a surgical nurse and a technician. Well, Lisa went into surgery about 4 o'clock this afternoon. We must emphasize that at that age, very fragile at about 3.5 weeks, and the surgery is extremely delicate. The problem is that the left side of her heart, the left ventricle, is not working properly. It's not the proper size, and that is what they're going in to try to correct at this hour. The parents told us that they had no idea last night about 7 o'clock, when problems started happening with Lisa, that the snow would become such a major factor that it is now. They started to catch on when they noticed that members of the night crew weren't able to leave, and members of the day crew weren't able to arrive here at the hospital. And doctors tell us that without perhaps flying the two members of the surgical team in, who knows what could have happened on that surgery. They wanted to have their best people here.
Okay, Tom, thank you very much. Reporting from Children's Hospital in Minneapolis. Well, many, many eyes were on the hump today. I'm talking about the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome. It sagged, but essentially Dennis Moore huffed and puffed and blew itself back up, right?
Not me, Dennis. The first thing we should say about what happened last night is that the Humphrey Metrodome was nowhere near as serious last night as what happened in November last year when the dome fell in. The southeast side of the dome was visibly sagging most of this morning, but not collapsed. The problem was a combination of high winds, lots of snow, and the weight of the lights, 20 to 30,000 pounds each, hanging from the roof cables inside.
With this heavy snow that we had and our melting, the added weight of the light trusses caused very small depressions in the roof. These small depressions were filled with water once we started to melt the snow. The more snow we melted, the more water and the more puddling that occurred, and the larger the depressions came.
Well, workmen shoveled the snow and pumped the water off this morning, and by late afternoon, dome officials said they had the problem under control and the dome was rising again.
Once we discovered what was causing the problems, we lowered 3 of the light trusses on the east side of the building in order to take that excess weight off, and once we started to do that, we were able to melt the snow and have it slide off and not have these depressions get any larger. That's where we are now, and we expect the roof to return to normal in a matter of a few hours.
Now, Jerry Bell said they could have not had a problem at all if they had been able to unhook the safety chains that hold the lights up last night. The lights are lowered mechanically or electrically to the ground and would have taken off the weight, but they couldn't because they couldn't get in a big enough crane to get up to the roof to have somebody unhook the chain. In the future, they say they're going to have a crane right there when it starts to snow. Dennis?
Okay, Dennis, thank you much. Well, this is the sort of storm that has earned Minnesotans a wide reputation for persevering, even thriving, on the worst of weather conditions. But this blizzard was unusually severe even by our standards, and this time very few Twin Cities residents tried to beat the odds by braving the elements and driving to work today.
Yeah. The dentist called and said, stay home. No sense coming in. None of the patients would come.
In fact, most people around here had enough work on their hands just trying to get out at the front door to shovel the sidewalk, especially with a fierce wind whipping around nearly 1.5 feet of snow.
My brother has a snowblower. He's coming down a little bit, so I might just wait for him.
Looks like a lot of work. Is it heavy snow?
Yeah, it's just the wind that's blowing. I'm shoveling here, and I'm getting her snow thrown in my face, so it's kind of a hopeless cause.
But by mid-morning, some folks had started to recover from the shock and even started making the most of the situation. They got out their cross-country skis and tried out the first good snow of the season, and even a lot of non-skiers also decided to get out of the house for a while.
Well, we'll do this instead of jogging today. There's no way you could ever jog around the lakes today.
How about your car?
My car's in the garage with a 5-foot drift in front of the garage, so I think I'll leave it there.
But both Minneapolis and St. Paul officials are asking